This month, which is the month of my birth, we got the much anticipated spiritual successor to Batman the Animated Series, known in the fandom as BTAS. And the discussion around this, while mostly trending toward positive, has also included some really stupid opinions that mostly boil down to
Penguins are women! Where? Where? They ruined my childhood! Where? Where?
I never take these kinds of bad faith criticisms seriously. They're normally offered by a vocal minority who have less media literacy than my cat, who is blind. My wife and I binged this show the day it came out, and while I enjoyed it for the most part, this wouldn't be a Storyrant video if I didn't have some conflicted thoughts on the whole thing. Spoilers, none of it includes the phrases
woke, DEI,
or any other culture war grifter nonsense. And yes, there will be spoilers in this video, so you've been warned. I love Batman the Animated Series. Who doesn't? It was a major part of my childhood, and I continue to enjoy the shows related to it, like the New Batman Adventures, known as TNBA in fan circles, Superman TAS, Batman Beyond, Justice League, and Justice League Unlimited, to name a few. They're fantastic and have aged incredibly well despite being mostly aimed at kids. They're aided in the part by strong writing by the likes of Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, and many other legendary Batman and DC Comics writers. They feature incredible voice acting talent like Tim Daly and the one true Batman, Kevin Conroy. May he rest in peace. Not to mention BTAS's excellent score. I mean, most of that is thanks to Danny Elfman, but there's some amazing original scores in there as well by Shirley Walker. And since I just mentioned incredible voice acting, I should probably also mention that the credit for that should go to casting director Andrea Romano, who is responsible for just so many shows having excellent voice acting talent and performances. BTAS and the entire DCAU stands in a class all its own. Many regard it as the greatest adaptation of anything DC Comics related. And after my most recent rewatch of the main shows in the continuity, I could never really get into Project Zeta, but Static Shock was pretty fun, and you should watch it. That's a statement I'd agree with. In fact, I've often said that if DC on film was to have any chance of rivaling the MCU, then the DCAU should have been the blueprint from the get-go. But you know, that ship sailed and then promptly crashed in gratuitous slow motion.
Green Lantern's got this.
The Cadmus arc in Justice League Unlimited is among my favorite long-form stories, which I'll be talking about in my mega video essay on long-form storytelling structure, due out sometime this century. But what did I think about Cape Crusader? I liked it. The end. See you next time, Space. Yeah, sorry, it's more complicated than that. The more important question is, does Caped Crusader live up to the legacy of BTAS and the DCAU at large? Well, no. But my thoughts on this are a bit complicated, so strap in and get ready to comment away, because we're gonna have a discussion here. Part 1. Bruce Timm rides again. Batman Cape Crusader is basically the pet project of Bruce Timm, who was one of the driving forces behind BTAS, along with Paul Dini, Eric Radomski, and a bunch of other people I can't really quite recall at the moment. I'm sorry, ADHD. Moving on. It's produced by J.J. Abrams, who I'm personally not really a fan of, Matt Reeves, who directed the excellent, moody, and overly long The Batman, starring method-acting powerhouse and former self-hating vampire Robert Pattinson. Originally, the show was supposed to come out on HBO Max, but was floated to other studios for some reason. I blame David Zaslav. In fact, despite the fact that I knew this when I went to go watch the show on August 1st, I instinctively went to HBO Max. No, I will not call it Max because it's fucking stupid, and was really confused when I couldn't find it. I was also sleep deprived, so maybe that explains it too. I don't know. There has been quite a bit of hype surrounding the show, though. It was originally announced in 2021 before it got shopped around, and it promised to do things that Bruce Timm felt he would have been unable to do in the original BTAS because of studio interference and censorship, and that alone was a little concerning for me. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with Bruce Timm. He's responsible for some great stuff, and his art style is just so damn recognizable, no doubt, and probably it helps that it's easy to animate. But he also has this super weird habit of trying to put Barbara Gordon and Batman into a relationship. That one scene in the Killing Joke adaptation, which he was an executive producer on, is probably the prime example of this, but there are some hints to his views on this ship in TNBA that are a little on the weird side as well, especially when you look back at BTAS and the history between Bruce and Barbara. Ooh. But thankfully, that doesn't seem to be a problem in Batman Caped Crusader, so we won't have to talk about it anymore. However, I was also concerned that the show would be edgy for the sake of being edgy. While censorship can suck the life out of some projects, BTAS thrived within the boundary of its limitations. It was still quite grown up, despite being aimed at children. I mean, Batman is still for children, mostly, after all. The other concern was, well, BTAS, like Ghostbusters, Alien, and so many other amazing pieces of media, some of which I've covered on this channel, wink wink, was lightning in a bottle. And you know what they say, you can't catch lightning in a bottle twice. Or at the very least, it's very rare. There's also the impossibly large bat-shaped boots left in the wake of Kevin Conroy's passing. The man was a fucking legend. His voice is what so many, including myself, hear when they read Batman comics. There have been a lot of great Batman voice actors over the years, working alongside Conroy, such as Bruce Greenwood. Batman Under the Red Hood is one of the best Batman animated things ever done, and you should watch it. Troy Baker, Arkham Origins, and even Diedrich Bader from the hilarious and deliciously campy Batman Brave and the Bold. But so far, none of them, especially Jensen Ackles, have been able to match Conroy. There's also the fact that Mark Hamill is the definitive Joker, despite the fact that there have been some excellent Jokers in animated projects as well. But Mark has decided to retire the role in the wake of Kevin Conroy's passing, which makes a lot of sense. In fact, many of the actors who played BTAS and DCAU villains are top-notch and perfectly cast. Who is more iconic than Michael Ansara as the cold and haunting Mr. Freeze, Richard Mole as Two-Face, Arlene Sorkin as Harley Quinn, and, I'm sorry, but no one will embody Lex Luthor or Darkseid better than Clancy Brown and Michael fucking Ironside, respectively. My concerns, however, turned out to be mostly for naught. Except... Part 2. I'm Batman. Again. While I generally enjoyed Batman Caped Crusader, I didn't love the series. Frankly, I was really excited about an Elseworlds take on Batman set in the 40s. And while the writing generally isn't bad and can even be inspired at times, it never really hits the highest highs that BTAS does. Hamish Linklater is great as Batman, and may even turn out to be a fantastic successor to the late Kevin Conroy, but his Bruce Wayne, while a nice throwback to Adam West in some ways, definitely feels a little subdued. In fact, while the voice acting is generally good, it often feels restrained. At first, I wondered if the producers thought this is just how noir is supposed to be, but the more I thought about that, the less convinced I was that this was an intentional creative choice. I think it comes down to not having someone on the level of Andrea Romano on board. She was so damn good at her job that she's partially responsible for some of the best voice casting and acting in a variety of different shows. Shows like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2012, Teen Titans, Avatar The Last Airbender, The Legend of Korra, The Batman, The Boondocks, Voltron Legendary Defender, and every great DC animated film leading up to her retirement. I don't know if it's just not possible to get actors in the same booth the way Andrea Romano used to do it, because of COVID restrictions or something else, but this has been a trend in DC animated projects, and it is a bit concerning. Because in a lot of ways, these newer films and shows, other than the fantastic My Adventures with Superman, feels really stilted for some reason. Like, seriously, I was practically falling asleep while watching the 3-part Crisis on Infinite Earths adaptation. It's like they took the most boring and wooden versions of all of these characters and stuffed them in an over-bloated mess of a film, and then cut it into 3 parts. It was not good. And even the final performance by Kevin Conroy couldn't save it. But this is not a video about that travesty of a trilogy. I suppose at some point I'll have to rant about that, because it makes some truly harebrained choices. The storytelling and writing in Caped Crusader, however, is marginally fine. It's not overly concerned about being edgy, which was my main concern, but in some ways TMBA was way more brutal. Just take a look at Over the Edge, the episode where Batgirl's greatest fears are realized as Jim Gordon goes all scorched earth against Batman in the wake of her death, which was a fever dream brought on by fear toxin, but even so, was incredibly tense, and one of the few instances I can think of where an episode turning out to be a nightmare left a lasting impression because of the real possibility that something like this could happen in universe. I did, however, appreciate the low-tech approach to Batman's detective work. It takes place in the 40s, after all. There is no Batcomputer here to do his work for him, although Batman certainly did do plenty of detective work in BTAS, and the Batcomputer was an easy form of shorthand that helped speed things up. There are some great sleuthing scenes in Caped Crusader, although none of them are quite as hilarious as Robert Pattinson's scene where he holds up the thumb drive attached to the thumb.
Thumb drive. Jesus.
The mysteries are mostly serviceable, but there are definitely a few that feel underbaked overall. And part of me wonders if part of the reason for the show feeling mostly okay, but not amazing, is the setting and time period. BTAS is famous for having a timeless setting that calls back to the 40s while still having plenty of futuristic gizmos and modern things as well. This is something that the new Superman movie being directed and written by James Gunn is doing, and that could turn out to be a fantastic choice. The problem with setting a superhero in any real-life city or time period is that it makes suspension of disbelief more difficult. There's also something to be said about having free reign to change things in such a world because it's not based in our reality. And frankly, the world of BTAS is designed so well, it's so fun to look at. But a lot of Caped Crusader feels drab, with uninspired camera angles and an almost too clean aesthetic to the animation, partly due to the fact that it's not hand-drawn like BTAS was. I think the showrunners should have taken greater pains to emulate the grainy and gritty feel of BTAS to really sell Caped Crusader's time period, mood, and noir inspirations. But perhaps this is something they'll improve on in Season 2. Let me know what you think. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the villains. Part 3, the villains. The new/old takes on characters like Harvey Dent, Clayface, and Harley Quinn are, once again, mostly just okay. Nothing to write home about, especially when it comes to Harvey. I thought the focus of having him be a revenge-driven vigilante was a nice idea, but the episodes dealing with his transformation and crimes weren't even as good as the TMBA episode where a third personality manifested in the form of the Judge. That episode is just so good. Clayface was seriously the most interesting out of the bunch, but I think was undercut by the subdued nature of the voice acting. If you don't know, Clayface's original appearance was quite different from what we know of the character in the comics and BTAS. He was originally a serial killer who targeted the cast and crew of a remake of one of his most famous films. Caped Crusader takes inspiration from that version of the character and gives him a pulp noir feel that I really like overall. Seriously, if the Batman Part 2 uses this version of the character, it'll probably be awesome. Harley Quinn, however, I don't know. This take just didn't work for me. She's not very fun, and the conclusion to her arc in the show is a little half-baked. I did, however, really enjoy the scenes where Bruce is forced to go to therapy, and she makes some awesome observations about the mask he wears in public. But we are getting a Season 2, so maybe they'll be able to take this version of the character in an interesting direction. I felt that My Adventures with Superman, while generally excellent, had a similar problem with lackluster villains that mostly ended up being turned around in Season 2 with some excellent character development. But we'll see. Okay, so let's talk about the Penguin. She's mostly fine. The idea of the Penguin being an abusive mother/mob boss is a really interesting take, but again, the performance just kind of falls flat. I could see this take working better if Anne Ramsey from Goonies and Throw Mama from the Train played the part. It just felt like she really needed an over-the-top personality to make it all work. The Goonies comparison in particular seems apt, considering that was essentially who Mama Fratelli was, and the abuse of her children eventually led to her downfall. Overall, I think the character has some potential, but it's another wait-and-see situation. And yes, some of the casting and character variations in the show are getting a lot of pushback by a very vocal minority of so-called fans that have apparently never heard of an Elseworlds story. Believe me, this is not the first or the last time that a character will go through dramatic changes for an alternate reality take. I mean, it's even in the name, right? Elseworlds! Say it out loud with me. Elseworlds! Yeah. In the comics, games, and films, characters such as Clayface, the Joker, Batman, Superman, Copperhead, and so many others have been gender swapped in alternate realities. It's seriously nothing new. And it's also really quite funny that the same people complaining about Oswalda Cobblepot most likely grew up with Batman 89 as their entry point in the fandom. And if you recall, that film made major changes to the world that Batman inhabits, such as giving Joker an origin story and having him kill Bruce Wayne's parents, and, oh yeah, Harvey frickin' Dent was also played by Billy D. Williams, a black man with more swagger than you will ever have. I would have killed to see Billy D. Williams take on the role of Two-Face. That would have been something truly special. In short, don't listen to those idiots. They have no idea what they're talking about, literally, and most of their complaints have no basis in reality. How about Christina Ricci as Catwoman, though? Like many people my age, I grew up having a massive crush on Christina Ricci. When I heard she was going to be Catwoman, I was like, okay, that's awesome. Sign me the fuck up. This version of Catwoman is super campy. She's fun, though, and I don't really have much more than that to say about her. She's not as fun or as Catwoman-y, I guess, as Adrienne Barbeau was in the role in BTAS, so I felt like it left a little to be desired. And that's really my main problem with the series. It feels like there are some good ideas, a really fun era to play around with, some callbacks to Batman Year One and his first string of stories, but I don't know, it's mostly just okay. And that's really my main problem with the series. It feels like there are some great ideas, a really fun era to play around with, some callbacks to Batman Year One and his first string of stories. But, I don't know, it's mostly just okay. Gordon and Barbara? Good, but not amazing. Bullock? Good, but not amazing. Flass? Okay, Flass in general is kind of great. I love the purple zoot suit, but it's not hard to improve Flass as a character, as he's always been a bit forgettable. And I guess lastly, I should mention the music. The score, while fitting tonally, doesn't ever hit the same highs as BTAS's, or any of the DCAU, for that matter. Hopefully, Season 2 of this show will blow my expectations out of the water, but for now, while I enjoyed Caped Crusader, I probably won't be rewatching it anytime soon. My Adventures with Superman, however, yeah, we're gonna need to talk about that soon. That's all I got for you this time. Let me know what you thought of this video and whether you'd like to see more videos on comics in the future. I do plan on doing videos for My Adventures with Superman, Dragon Ball, and Invincible in the future, so your feedback will be appreciated. That said, be sure to deploy your likes, comment whether you agree or disagree with any of my takes here, and be sure to share this video with someone who enjoys storytelling, comics, Batman, and media analysis in general. I'm Eric Malikyte, and I'll see you next time, Space Cowboy. Finger guns.
H.R. Jameson says you shouldn't watch this show. No, you should watch something better, like Howdy Doody. There's a good show. Yeah. Oh yeah, Howdy Doody. Oh.